A few more minutes here as some others join the meeting. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully everybody's doing well, and welcome to our JobsOhio program today. Before we get started, and I hand it off to our panelists, I did want to just make a few announcements, housekeeping items for the group. A couple of things. Most of you are used to our golf outing in June here. We have postponed that. It'll be held in September this year. So the golf outing is going to be moved to September 9th and should be at North Star, same venue as the past few years. A couple of upcoming programs. We have banking and lending post-COVID. That's been moved to July 15th. So look for an invite in the near future on that. We also have a program on industrial logistics, onshoring and reshoring in August. That date is, or that program slated for August 12th. So you'll see invites for that one as well in the future. Finally, one last thing, NAIOP National did extend their free online courses. There's a lot of great courses on there. I think that's been extended through August 1st. So take advantage of that if you haven't done so as of yet. And with that, we are fortunate today. Have a great program about the Ohio Site Inventory Program coming up. With us, we have Diana Rife and Phil Smith from JobsOhio, and they're going to take us through the program and the guidelines on that. So a warm welcome to them and a thank you to them for doing this for us today. So Diana and Phil, I'll pass it off to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rife, and thank you for having us here to talk through the Ohio Site Inventory Program. Diana and I have been working on this for almost a year now, so we're pretty excited about it, excited to see it get off the ground and running. Before we dive in, just wanted to cover a couple of housekeeping items. If you have any questions today, you should see in your Zoom control panel the ability to use the Q&A function. I do have those open on my screen, so if you have any questions that come up throughout the presentation, feel free to go ahead in that Q&A section, write them, type them up in there, and Diana and I will go ahead and we'll get to those questions either at the end, or if we are able to spot them right during that point in the conversation, we'll be happy to answer them at that time as well. Second point I wanted to let everybody know is all of the information that we're providing today is still in a draft format. I know I saw, looking through the attendee list, a lot of familiar faces on here. So I think some of you probably saw some of the similar information presented when we did the OSIP roadshow events back in February and March. So just so you guys are aware, a lot of this will probably be somewhat, well, mostly a recap of that information that we provided then. But hopefully you still find some value and interest in it. And for those of you that had not attended those, I'll do a little bit of an overview of who we are at JobsOhio, just to make sure that it all makes sense to you as well. This program is planned to go through this month to the JobsOhio board. We are expecting approval of it, after which we'll be able to actually start doing these speculative development projects. At this point today, the program is still in draft format, so that's why we're not able to share the slides and reference materials immediately following this meeting. However, we have been building it out on our website, building out all of the reference material. Those pages have not gone live, but I can assure you as soon as it's approved by our board that we are ready to flip the switch and make sure that all of this information is readily available for anyone who's interested in it. So with that being said, I'll just dive in a little bit, give some overview as to where this program came from, who we are at JobsOhio, and maybe this will kind of set the stage before Diana goes in and does the deep dive on what the actual program is and how it functions. So for those of you who are not familiar with JobsOhio, we are the private nonprofit economic development entity for the state of Ohio. So generally speaking, what that means is everything we do is going back to encouraging job creation and capital investment within our state. Really looking at diversifying the economy, wanting to make sure we've got resilience, able to bounce back in times of recession. And that's really what our main goal is with all of the efforts and all of the initiatives that we do. As we look at the history of JobsOhio, we were stood up in 2011, and pretty much everything you see over on the left side of the screen right now is what we refer to as JobsOhio 1.0. So there's 9 sectors that we focus on. So those are 9 specific industry sectors. As I mentioned, looking at that diverse economy, looking at that job creation. What we have done in the past year as we look at JobsOhio moving forward is we've expanded our definition of 1.0. So no longer do we just have the core 9 sectors that we focused on before, but we're now also focusing on federal and military installations as well as air service to our state's airports. That right there under 1.0 runs us about $150 million a year. That's what our estimated budget year over year is for that core element of our business and our operations. And as we look forward into JobsOhio 2.0, where are we going in the future? We've identified 3 key categories of talent, sites, and innovation, where we're looking at spending another $50 million a year, essentially doubling our annual spend on our economic development activities within Ohio. So today, as you can imagine, we're going to be focusing on that sites bubble under JobsOhio 2.0 with that additional $50 million a year spend on those activities. So this right here is really a good diagram outlining the breadth of the different site and building related activities that JobsOhio is involved in. Today, we're primarily talking about that site inventory program. It's the 4th one from the left there. But I do want to just touch base on all of this programming very quickly so everybody kind of has an understanding of the different pieces of the field that we play in. So the core of economic development is really over on the 4 left. It's the site selection activities. So these are companies that come to us or site selection consultants that come to us and they tell us things like, I need 20 acres. I need to be within proximity to a 4-lane highway or interstate. I need 5 megawatts of electricity, so much in natural gas. I need access to a certain labor force. And that information all comes into us, and our team at JobsOhio on the project management side, working through a pretty large network of local economic developers, regional economic developers, and utility partners, rail providers, and state agencies, goes and identifies what are those properties that are best suited to meet the needs of these companies that are coming in. And these are competitive projects. It could land in Ohio, it could land in North Carolina, it could land in Indiana, and we are competing to try to say, Ohio is the place for you. Ohio has the best opportunities. So we have programming around how do we get better at being competitive with those site selection opportunities through JobsOhio. We manage a statewide database of real estate inventory known as Zoom Prospector that can be accessed through our website as well. That data is maintained by local economic developers through coordination with primarily real estate brokers and the real estate communities in those specific local jurisdictions. And it's really accessed by companies across the world as they look to identify where they want to locate within, not only within Ohio, but within the rest of the entire country or within North America as a whole, depending on what their search region is. As we start moving further right on this continuum, you see revitalization effort. This is something that Diana Rife has been working on since, I believe, since 2014. Really going in, working directly with those companies to provide grants and financing to assist with improving underutilized property while these companies are looking at job creation. So we all know that, sometimes brownfield sites or even just underutilized sites do not necessarily have the best financial argument for their development over a greenfield opportunity. And one of the areas that we like to step in is try to figure out how do we make getting rid of that blight in our communities and in our state more attractive to these job creators. The site inventory program is what we'll go over today. And then as you go further right, we're looking at community readiness programs. The Ohio Southeast Site Initiative already exists, where we work to perform engineering due diligence and speculative development in Southern and Eastern Ohio. And then on the far right is the inclusive growth strategy. We won't touch on that too heavily today, but that is in a similar situation to the site inventory program, really expanding this offering of programming that we have within JobsOhio. Anticipate that one being approved by the board this month as well. But really those two on the far right are looking at more of our distressed communities, our distressed regions of the state, and trying to identify how do we help them progress, how do we help them so they can move further left in this continuum to the point where private sector developers are interested in developing those regions and see opportunity and potential there, and even further left to the point where they can actually be competitive in those reactive site selection projects. So as I mentioned, really the core of economic development and sites and buildings really goes back to these site selection activities. The companies coming to us and outlining, here's what we're looking for. This right here really just outlines what we've seen over the past 5 years in terms of these requests. Ranging from 37 requests back in 2015, 2017 and 18, getting up to 63 requests from these companies, dipping a little bit in 2019 down to 43 searches total. Really, we see a bigger emphasis in these searches in Q2 and Q3 of most years. Not really sure that there's a whole lot to read into there, but it is definitely of interest as we look into it. Then as we dive a little bit deeper into those requests that we just looked over, what are they asking for? Typically when they come to us, they're asking for decently large acreages. They're not asking us for 5 acres. They're not asking us for 10 acres. On average, they're asking us for 92 acres. I threw the median in there of 30, so about half the requests are over 30, half are below. When we're starting to talk about buildings, they're asking us for an average of 188,000 square feet or a median of 100,000 square feet. And realistically, we see the top 3 sectors, advanced manufacturing, automotive, and food and agribusiness, account for about 70% of the total requests alone. So there's definitely some interesting trends that we have when we talk about reactive site selection and these companies that are coming to us. And all of this data is really been crucial in the design element of the site inventory program, as we really try to look to match the demand that we've seen over the years to the supply of real estate inventory that we have within the state of Ohio, really trying to win more of those reactive site selection projects. One thing that you might notice on here is as you start getting to the bottom of this, in the technology, aerospace, aviation, healthcare, financial services sections, a lot of those tend to be more heavy on the office users and the office component. Something that's very important to acknowledge when you look at our data is that companies that are looking for office space don't come to JobsOhio usually. So there's definitely a large element of, historically, of office users who have gone primarily to brokers first off and started their search in that location rather than starting their search with us. Whereas we see the opposite is true when we start getting into more of that manufacturing space, more of that logistics and distribution space. The companies tend to come to us first, oftentimes looking for a unicorn of a building that probably doesn't exist. And then once they realize they can't find that unicorn of an existing building, they switch it over to a site search and start looking for available acreage, infrastructure that's available, ready to plug into low risk, high speed to development projects. This right here comes from a McKinsey study back in 2018. Really what this did is it helped us identify and match that information from the 9 industry sectors that I mentioned earlier that are kind of core to JobsOhio 1.0, and said, okay, where are opportunities for winning? Where are the types of inventory, what are the types of inventory within our given targeted industry sectors and that we need, that we're lacking, that we think we could win more of these reactive site selection projects with, and where in the different locations within the state of Ohio do we think these types of inventory are going to have the best opportunity for winning. We don't need to focus too heavily on this. It's more of an interest point rather than anything that you really need to hang your hat on and say, you know, this is absolutely has to fall into this perfect little puzzle in order to be qualified for OSIP. That is not the case. I think it's more of just an interesting reference point as we look through some of these identified inventory gaps that have been previously identified by these various studies that we've had done based on that reactive site selection data, based on market trends, based on the industry sectors themselves and the information coming out of professionals in those sectors. And then this slide here really just helps us dive a little bit deeper into what does it mean to be a light manufacturing facility? What does it mean to be a research and development park? And realistically, a lot of this right here is going to be related back to utilities. For us in economic development, we win and lose projects over our ability to understand the utilities. And then second, beyond utilities is going to be around the due diligence components, the engineering studies associated with a given site. So with that, I will say one last thing before I turn it over to Diana Rife to really dive into the program guidelines for OSIP. And really it's just what we've known in the past and the information that's come into us in the past, our historical site selection data. Over the past couple months, we've really been thrown for a loop trying to understand how does all of this fit into this post-COVID-19 world. So realistically, you know, the nature of this program is going to stay the same in that we're really looking to match our supply of inventory to the demand that's coming into us from our targeted industry sectors. However, looking at historical data today is maybe not necessarily the best indicator of where our growth opportunities are going to be going forward. With that, I'll go ahead, Diana, I'll let you dive right into this.
Great, thank you. Thanks everybody for listening. Some of you listening again, others listening for the first time, and we'll look forward to answering questions. To sort of take Phil's last noted theme on this pretty quickly, we want to make sure that you guys understand we are trying to understand that post-COVID-19 world right now, and reshoring is a term everyone's using. What it actually means, I'm not sure that everyone has clear indicators. It doesn't mean some automotive thing that is currently in China automatically shutting its doors and moving everything back to the US, but there will be some adjustments. We are trying to be very thoughtful and listening to those components that are new discussions, will be new selling points as to why certain projects might be more important to a particular sector than might have been 3 or 6 months ago in those discussions. So we just want to let you guys know that we are trying to listen to that and add it to that McKinsey data that is a little bit older when we look at, generally speaking, where our inventory is. The program is right along JobsOhio's process, and support abilities. We are loans and we are grants. We try and make our loans low interest to align with what traditional financing might need and an assistance. When you start dealing with our program, with the revitalization program and sites, which 6 or 7 years ago, when we were really talking about this, Ohio has an abundance of brownfields. So you needed to be able to say, how do you fill that gap that a lender doesn't want to, the site's underwater, a lender doesn't want to supply all of the financing towards it. So we really focus on that piece. Our goal with this program is managed speculative development. We don't want to just see a site with an extended utility line sitting there vacant, nor do we want to see a building renovated. As a speculative developer, you don't want to see it renovated sitting there vacant. We're looking to try and fill gaps with those needs. When you take the sites, the locations are typically the best, the utilities are already there, talent in many cases is already around a lot of our existing use sites. How do we get them back into productive reuse? We want to try and figure out how to assist in mitigating developer risks, which slows down product development. We want to be able then to, by that, accelerate the process of bringing these managed speculative developments into our inventory. We are looking, key piece of this is a diverse portfolio. If you take the snapshot of the state of Ohio, 88 counties, there is a wide variety of opportunity. There's a wide variety of need. We want to be able to see small sites, large buildings, small buildings, large sites, medium versus large, R&D, office with a caveat right now, because I think there's a twist to the office market that was not there 3 months ago, with manufacturing, warehousing and distribution, suburban, urban, rural. We want to have those types, try and be able to have a diverse portfolio that will touch or be able to spur additional development in and around our 88 counties. Other key components. As you know, when you have tricky sites, having a real orchestra leader is important. You have to have all the pieces and parts line up to make it work. An experienced development entity is requested when you're coming to JobsOhio looking for support for a project, because there will probably be a lot of players at the table. Rarely is it just JobsOhio and a developer sitting down talking. It will be the community, it will be the county, it will be a land bank, it may be an owner, it may be Ohio EPA, it may be wetlands issues, so you've got the Corps. There are lots of people that need to be at the table. Our loans look to typically support new construction in a way. Our fees are flat. We have no prepayment penalties. We try and be below what the market is if it's appropriate. It's not required, but we do like to be able to offer it early on as an additional capital flexibility. Grants typically go towards costs associated with demolition if there is environmental or site remediation, building renovations, site preparation, and infrastructure improvements. Next, Phil. Program has 3 components. Phil really touched on this at the very beginning when he talked about this. The primary thing we're talking about today is in the darker gray box, speculative site and building development. Sites, buildings, targeting JobsOhio's industry sector and users. Professional studies are also a small component of this. Those are definitely determined based on need. And then air facilities will be also a part of this. And the air facilities may actually just tie in with a speculative site or building component as it works towards air. Next slide. Program details. It is a 5-year program. Don't exactly get caught up on the dates of it. It is a 5-year program. It's a long-term program, so it is not something that get panicked in the second we have our board of directors approve these pieces. You do not need to be, it is not in a round, meaning if you're not into us by the end of June, we will be, our programs are typically like JobsOhio. We discuss and review everything on a regular basis, weekly, monthly. This will go for several years. Some of you know we used to have a program, we learned from it. We called it the pilot program. It was speculative development that we also did with that. We had a lot of good success pieces we took away from it. We also had some difficulties that we've learned our lessons from. We took all of those pieces, and as Phil said, we've been working for a year trying to thread together a new program that would be sustainable from that standpoint. It is a $50 million program, which puts it at approximately $50 million a year. $2 million will be the maximum grant per any project. It is also not a guaranteed amount that JobsOhio would support, but that would be the maximum you might be able to get as support. The project may support a loan. The maximum loan component could be $3 million, so that the maximum potential support altogether would be $5 million for a project. The maximum JobsOhio will contribute towards any project is 50% of the project. What we also have learned is to have that variety. Sometimes the asks are big. We will vet the project completely in full details. You'll get to see our pre-vet sheet in a little bit, so that we really determine what we think is the appropriate support amount, not just the ask of 2 million because that's what somebody wants to ask. It's very important to us to understand the risk the developer's taking, the pro forma, in the sense, is it just the fact that you have to hold it for the 2 years of renovations and construction, but then you might be in such a high demand market, you're going to lease or sell it for way over market, therefore your pro forma numbers jump. We look at the long-term pro forma analysis that we have. Next slide, Phil.
Just one point of clarification on the loan and grant component, maximum potential awards. While the maximum grant is 2 million, it's the maximum grant loan combination is 5 million. So it could, for instance, be a $5 million loan. It could be a $4 million loan and a $1 million grant. Just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. A couple of guiding principles as you're analyzing this or looking at opportunities to present to JobsOhio and our network partners throughout the state. Required, this is required, and I'm sort of putting the words in a confusing way. Typically, JobsOhio, in our 1.0 process, it required job creation and capital investment in our industry sectors. This program as a managed speculative development program, no job creators at the table at the time of this development, because that would potentially put it into our regular project process. So it's speculative, no end user there. If one comes along during it, that's great, that's a whole separate story. But at the start of this, we want to understand the market, but no end user needs to be with you. A phase 1 needs to be completed. The environmentals need to be understood. So if a phase 1 implies a phase 2 needs to be completed, the phase 2 needs to be done prior to coming to JobsOhio. It will give us a better understanding of what might be the amounts and the times needed for any kind of remediation if required. The program is reimbursement based, which is typical of JobsOhio. Strongly preferred components: diverse portfolio, experienced development partner. Here's one piece that's very important to us. 30 acres are minimum for strictly site development, meaning there's no building, it is just getting a site ready. If there is a building on the project and the property as part of this particular program you might be bringing to us for review, it can be much smaller, meaning if you have a 100,000 square foot building, sometimes 10 acres is all you need. If there's a building on it, it does not have a site acreage limitation. We will look to try and incorporate a loan for any new construction. To go and reiterate what we continue to say, JobsOhio will prioritize the speculative development projects as it hits areas and our targeted industry sectors, and the ones that are appearing to need more reshoring opportunity, to meet reshoring opportunities. You guys all know my name and mantra associated with JobsOhio, which has been revitalization. Brownfields is a big thing in Ohio. We were able to sunset the Clean Ohio program. We were able to stand up JobsOhio's revitalization program. Clean Ohio program spent on average between 25 million, 25 to 30 million a year for the 10 years it ran. JobsOhio spends same amount, approximately 25 to 30 million in grants. We also have an average of 5 to 7 million in low interest loans on top of that. So we are able to be more flexible and continue the success of the Clean Ohio program. We would also view brownfield redevelopment projects most likely having some more favorable or additional support opportunities. Focus again, filling inventory gaps that we have within Ohio's targeted industry sectors. Next slide. Eligible applicants. This puts JobsOhio outside of a number of the other components that we have with our partners at the state and the various agencies there. Eligible applicants can be businesses, can be private developers, can be nonprofits, can be the port authorities, or a local government. So we are able to have a diverse eligible applicant. Ownership and control must be understood. We understand with land redevelopment, be it greenfield or brownfield, sometimes there are some sticky steps. The sticky steps are fine to have. We need an outline of understanding to be able to know how that ownership will be completed at the end of a project. The beneficiary, this is traditional within Ohio's programs, Ohio EPA and the state of Ohio. The beneficiary cannot be the contaminator should there be environmental issues. Eligible end uses, industrial, warehousing, distribution, office buildings, R&D, business parks. For mixed use, there are eligible components, but we require at least, no more than 20% of the total mixed use development being non-office. So if it's retail or residential as part of the project, that's fine. Cannot be more than 20% of it. Ineligible, parks, residential, retail, hotels, hospital, parking garages and parking lots, and entertainment venues. Development costs that would be considered eligible: site preparation, new building construction, infrastructure. We will look at on and off-site utilities, roads, rails, docks, etc., as a project needs it for full development and use. Redevelopment projects, eligible costs would be demolition, environmental remediation, which would encompass testing, lab fees, the certified professional fees, asbestos and lead paint abatement, building renovations, and removal and disposal of universal and construction wastes. We will give some special consideration to administrative costs, engineering services, parking lots if they're an environmental control as determined by a certified professional, and some portion may be able to be building and land acquisition costs. Ineligible. Signage, basically what we call tenant-specific items, signage, lighting, landscaping, parking lots and garages, environmental insurances and clearances, operations and maintenance costs, tenant improvements, and meals and entertainment expenses are not eligible for reimbursement or part of the project pieces. Fees and fines, etc., debt servicing, rolling stock, those are also ineligible. So if you have questions now, we can go through those. We can, I can take a look, or Phil, I'm looking at the stuff on the side right now.
First question is, what drives loan amount versus grant amount on a typical redevelopment renovation project?
Okay, the way we take a look at that is we look at what your sources of financing, whether it's investors, traditional lenders, etc., and it is individually reviewed per a sites team that we have internally. So we take a look at how the structure is, what all the pieces and parts are. It may be, they may have new market tax credits, opportunity zone credits. There may be other things. We try and take a look at all of the pieces and parts and the timing of what makes a project, as well as the inventory gap that it's filling, and then really work with the development entity that's presenting the project to JobsOhio to figure out how to make the project work.
And then the other question is there a cap amount on loan size or grant size per project? I think this question probably came in before we hit that slide. But yes, maximum grant is $2 million. And then maximum total award can be up to $5 million with a loan grant combination. So loan could be up to 5 million if there's no grant, or any combination in between those.
And it cannot exceed 50% of the overall project cost. So you gotta, if you're gonna get a $5 million, let's say you get a $5 million loan for the project has to be at least $10 million or greater.
And those are the only questions we have in the Q&A box. If there's any other questions. Oh,
This is Rafe. I actually had a question. It won't allow me to type in the Q&A box, but when do you guys anticipate rolling out the actual where you can apply, and kind of give us an idea on timing of that? And then second to that, how long do you anticipate it taking to start awarding projects?
We anticipate having the program, we are looking to have the details of the program approved by our board of directors this week. Should that occur, we will upload effectively there'll be a pre-vet form that will be uploaded onto the JobsOhio website under the sites tab, which will give the world the ability to go on to our website and get these details that we've just discussed today, because taking notes or trying to take snapshots isn't enough, but it'll be online for us to have this program get itself developed. JobsOhio typically is able to review projects fairly quickly. And when I say fairly quickly, once all of the details are put together, so I'm pushing the ball back to the developer or the community to be able to coordinate all of that. Once all of those details are put together, it takes us about 2 weeks for an internal review process to be able to come up with what our recommendation for support will be. And then JobsOhio has an online application, which typically is, at that point in time, it's pre-populated with information that's already been given. It's nothing new. And then once hit send, that puts an effective date out there for a project. Anything from that date going forward, it provided those costs are eligible, would be able to get reimbursement once an executed agreement has been. So for instance, we want to make sure that everybody understands we can't go back. So if you did something last year, but your project's not going to be approved till next week, you will not be able to ask for reimbursement on costs spent last year. It's only going forward. But those costs as an encompassing story support the overall reasons of why and how that project might need development support. Hopefully that answered that question. Flexibility is a great thing. JobsOhio offers flexibility with these programs. That said, flexibility means there is not a black and white list of here's what to do or not to do. It's not a check box. It is really individual review of each project with our network partners. So as you guys know, 21 Columbus is the Central Ohio Network Partner, Team NEO. Northeast Ohio, RGP is Northwest Ohio. Dayton Development Coalition's West. Ready Cincinnati is Southwest. And Ohio Southeast is the newest name for what was previously known as APEG, which is Southeast Ohio. Any other questions?
Is there a preference between urban versus suburban or rural sites? The answer to that is no. We are looking for diverse portfolio. So as Diana mentioned earlier, there are 88 counties across the state. Every single one of them is different and unique in its own real estate needs. What we want to avoid with this program is, for example, funding all office buildings in downtown Columbus because those are the ones that have sophisticated developers that are ready to go on day one. So I can imagine, you know, there's going to be a large number, well, 4 months ago, I would have imagined there would have been a large number of downtown Columbus office buildings that were ready to go and looking for support with full information on day one of this. I'm not sure that we're still going to have quite so many, but probably still have a few of them. But we are really looking at the urban, the suburban, the rural, no real preference towards any one of them other than we really want to make sure that we are creating that inventory that is meeting a known demand, and we want to make sure that we're really serving the needs of all the various areas of Ohio, not just one particular area.
Also, we're trying to encourage with the length of the program, meaning 5 years, sophisticated developers will be ready quicker to present opportunities to us. We do want to be able to make sure we give our smaller, less experienced partners that might be in smaller communities or counties that are a little bit further away from cores or the stronger activity areas, but might have some very compelling components as to why they should be part of this inventory. We want to be able to offer that opportunity for them to be able to have the ability to have support if it takes a little bit of time for their project to get developed.
All right, last chance for questions. Well, we thank you all for giving us an opportunity to speak with you. I'm not sure, Rafe, if you want me to turn it back to you or Sandy or Debbie.
That Phil, thank you. That wraps it up for today. Diana and Phil, we really appreciate you joining us and providing the info. So again, thank you. And we look forward to the program coming live. So thanks everybody for joining us, and have a great rest of the week.